My name is Erin McNeil. I am the latest Director of Development at Windhouse. It's my pleasure to be here today to welcome everyone, our esteemed guests, donors, and chair sponsors here today. A few details. Washrooms are that way. They're just being cleaned right now. They'll be open in a minute. They're down the hall, and in the unlikely event of an emergency, the closest exit is the door that you came in, exit 8. There's one door there that's open. All the other doors are locked right now, so let's be nice, be kind if there's an emergency. This is all based on a podium. Thanks, Leslie. This is great leadership. And the CEO holds your binder. Before we begin, let us take a moment to acknowledge that we are gathered today on Treaty 6 territory. Treaty 6 was entered into in 1876, and for almost 150 years, we have been living, working, and growing on this land that is the ancestral and traditional territory of the Cree, Nakota Sioux, the Dene, the Saulteaux, as well as the Métis and Inuit, and cared for these lands for generations. We acknowledge this land is also within the historical Northwest Métis homeland, which includes the North Saskatchewan River Territory, the Lesser Slave Lake, and the Lower Athabasca Territory. We acknowledge the traditional knowledge keepers and elders, both past and present, and are grateful for their contributions that help keep this land beautiful, and we make this acknowledgement as an act of reconciliation. And I'm sorry I have to read that, but I'm from Vancouver and new to Alberta. On behalf of Windhouse, it's an honor to stand before you tonight and share our excitement for this Light the Way fundraiser, part of our month-long Light the Darkness campaign in support of shelter operations. I'd like to thank our partners at Kingsway Mall, and just to be clear, without our sponsors, we would not have been able to do this. So we really, really appreciate the sponsors. So Kingsway Mall was fantastic. They have done nothing but bend over backwards to ensure that we were able to pull off this and 3 other events during the month of March, so we're really grateful for that. Brookfield Residential, I think without them we wouldn't have the house. Yeah, where's Brookfield Residential? Hands up, guys. Yeah, you're too shy. Yeah, thank you. One-to-one mailing. Anybody here have one-to-one mailings? Okay, well, all this signage. It's amazing. Thank you, one-to-one. Stahl Peterbilt, shy. They wanted to support us, but I don't think they're here tonight. Endura Manufacturing. Anybody here from Endura? And Quadra. We have a Quadra? Yeah. Hands up, guys. Thank you. Thank you very much. Windhouse, for those of you who don't know, is a safe haven for women, children, and non-binary individuals who are fleeing gender-based violence. Across our 3 shelters, we foster resiliency and stability in our residents through forward-thinking funding models and programming. Our low-barrier approach means we address both essential and complex needs resulting from abuse, including poverty, home and food insecurity, and addiction. With an unwavering commitment to our shared mission of a life free from violence, we pioneer collaborative efforts with our community partners and actively seek to foster unity among gender-based violence prevention organizations. The funds raised tonight will go directly to shelter operations. There's a gift catalog. You're probably sick of hearing about this by now, but if you're wanting to know where the money goes tonight, great examples are in the gift catalog. It goes directly to operations, and it benefits every single human being that walks in our door. Will benefit from your generosity tonight. That is sweet. I went rogue on you. I went rogue. I now have the pleasure of introducing our moderator for tonight's speaker panel. Nicole Weisberg joined the CTV Edmonton team as a reporter-writer in 2012. Since then, she's worked as a live reporter, general assignment reporter, and multimedia journalist. She's also had roles anchoring The Weekend and Noon News. Not new news, but noon news. Right? She is now digging deeper on stories in the Edmonton area with her segment, A Closer Look. Nicole is a local kid. She grew up in Beaumont. Alberta and graduated from NAIT. Welcome, Nicole, and thank you.
With a binder. Thank you. So I'm going to introduce everyone on our panel. This is Leslie Allen, Chief Executive Officer and great binder holder expert. With over 35 years in the nonprofit sector, Leslie has dedicated her career to advocating for vulnerable populations. As CEO of Winhouse, she leads with collaboration and innovation, ensuring a safe and supportive environment for women and children fleeing violence. And this is Ashley Baxter, Chief Programs and Operating Officer. Ashley has been with Winhouse since 2021, championing innovation and client-centered approach in shelter operations. With an intersectional feminist framework, she empowers women to recognize their worthwhile, fostering a safe and supportive space. And finally, Nova Winter, Shelter Manager. Nova is committed to understanding family violence and its generational impact. She works to creating a welcome refuge at Winhouse, valuing collaboration and encouraging community involvement in supporting our residents. Thank you, ladies, for being here.
I should go sit over there and sit here.
Well, we can start here. So, ladies, easy question to start. What is Winhouse's mission, and who do you primarily serve? We'll start with you, Leslie.
So Winhouse's mission is to serve women, children, and non-binary individuals who are fleeing violence here in Edmonton and surrounding areas. The second part of the question, I'm sorry, I was going to that.
I think you covered it. It was
Okay.
the mission and who do you primarily serve?
And who do we primarily serve? So it's women, children, and non-binary individuals.
We work to create safe and sustainable exits and safe environments for women and children and non-binary humans.
So I know that everyone who comes into Winhouse has a different story and a different situation. Maybe you can help answer this question as, leading the shelter. But what are the different situations that people are coming from? What are their family situations like? What are they trying to flee? And does it happen? I guess, are they getting nervous? Sorry. Is it a long process, or do people decide they need to leave right away?
I think it's a mixed process. I think some people decide to leave right away and they call the helpline and we don't have space. Or they've decided a long time ago, but they're not quite ready to make that step to call and get into shelter. But we see folks from all kinds of different walks of life, different experiences, people that are fleeing violence in general, so that can look all kinds of ways, but then also people fleeing family violence specifically, or intimate partner violence or gender-based violence. So it's a wide range of folks that we see through our space. I mean, we've seen folks, seniors that were living outside, or one that was assaulted and had nowhere to go. So we've seen a wide range of people, families, and all kinds of stuff.
I just wanted to maybe define gender-based violence. So we support humans fleeing violence, and gender-based violence is an umbrella term that encompasses all sorts of violence. So if that's domestic violence, which is within the binary of the gender, and then you have intimate partner violence, and then you might have landlord to tenant violence, and you might have familial violence, like family violence, so son to mom and things of that nature. So it's an umbrella term that encompasses quite a bit of different versions of violence, and so we are here to support folks fleeing gender-based violence.
I know from doing some recent stories on this that I guess what was most shocking to me was how many people want to come into shelter and can't, and what you do then. So maybe you can talk about how many people are actually turned away from shelter and then what happens after that.
So we currently don't have the ability to give you unique numbers of the unique person turned away from shelter. However, we can say that within the last year, we had 3,200 calls that were an admission request that we were unable to support. And that is pretty astonishing, and we had a very high level of calls last year. In the 23-24 ACWS Alberta Council of Women's Shelters data release, they indicated that it was the highest number of calls across Alberta in the last decade. So within the 23-24, it was the highest number of calls in the last decade across Alberta for support to seek admissions. We, on the helpline, when you're unable to, when we don't have space, our staff will safety plan, ensure safety right now. So the number one thing is, are you safe right now? And if not, how can we get you to safety right now? It may not be our shelter, but let's figure out what is. And if you are safe right now, let's work with you to safety plans. When you are not safe, what resources do you have in your fold so that we can set you up for success when you are not safe right now? We also give people resources that are in the community so that we can ensure that they also have other resources at their fingertips when and if they are in the need, in the space that they're in.
One of the things that we have really been looking at is, how do we turn this trend around? What do we do as a group, as WinHouse, with our community partners? How do we turn this around? And first, at first it looks like it is we don't have enough emergency beds. That's what's happening here. But really, in thinking about it, this is nothing more than a systemic problem that we're having with the affordable housing crisis that we're living in right now. Shelters were built back in the 70s and the 80s, and they were built for very temporary accommodations. So women should be really, at the very beginning of shelters, they were only supposed to be in there for 20 days, and then it got extended to 30 days. Now it isn't uncommon for a woman to be in our shelter for 4 months. And that is only because we have no other place for her to go in the landscape. So that is one of the biggest problems that we're having. On the positive side, there is a lot of government uptake right now around affordable housing. There are initiatives to be able to support this. But as a community, wherever we look, this is just one of those real ringing truths that we need to have places for people to go who are in crisis, who have the services to be able to stay in those places. They have the support to be able to stay in those places. And I firmly believe that if we had enough capacity to be able to have women go into safe places from the emergency shelter, that we would never have to turn a call away. So it's in some ways that simple, in some ways that complex.
I think something else we're doing to kind of reduce or at least address people can't come into shelter is we're really kind of changing the tune on how we're serving people in terms of highlighting this safe and sustainable exit. So folks aren't just leaving at the end of 30 days back into their situation. What we've decided to do, instead of being frustrated with the situation, frustrated that people are with us for 3 months, and frustrated at the system, we've decided to be like, okay, what can we do to address this? Well, can we reduce recidivism? Can we reduce people calling again? Because that will maybe cut some of the calls. I don't know what the proportion it would cut it by, but there's a large portion of people that we've seen before that are calling again. And so that's what we've done. People are here for 3 months, and we do everything that we can to reduce them coming back to the shelter. So setting them up for success, setting them up for a safe and sustainable exit, one that they can afford, that they can continue. So that's what our staff have been doing to kind of combat this, and I think they've been doing incredible work. I think I hope it's been helping. We'll see.
I know that
the support system for people facing domestic abuse and that type of thing is you always face pressures, but there's been different pressures over the years, and I know that the pandemic was a big factor that really made it worse. Maybe you could talk about what happened during the pandemic and how that's continued on, that pressure has continued.
Within the pandemic, we were in our homes. We weren't going out anywhere, and then we left the pandemic, and now we're in an economic crisis. We're in an affordability crisis. We're in a housing crisis. So the stress, the continued impacts on families and individuals, and so we're just seeing a continued increase in the fallout from the pandemic. And so when you have a time with higher stress, unfortunately, that also you see higher rates of violence, and that is what we're struggling with.
So I know that there's obviously the emergency shelter, but there's also support lines. So maybe you can talk a little bit about your helpline and what is offered when someone just wants to call and get some advice.
So what's offered right now is our staff are trained to be call takers as well as crisis intervention workers. So they take on the role of caring for folks when they call, just sitting with them in whatever they're experiencing on the line, and trying to create a safe space. So a lot of what they do is assess the situation for risk. They'll identify, is this an immediate risk? Is this something that we could maybe refer you to resources? Or is this something that maybe isn't quite as high as some of the other calls? So they'll kind of assess that, and then they'll provide safety planning, like Ashley said. So really helping people kind of assess their situation, create a bit of an inventory of what do they have right now with them to keep control or to have some control over the situation. And then kind of work with them to formulate a plan for exit or a plan to access resources. That's a big part of what they do. And then one of the biggest things that they get to do is when we get to say yes to somebody coming in is help them with that warm handoff to shelter. So we organize, transportation so someone can get to us. We build them in on what they're going to be experiencing when they come to shelter. So there's kind of actually quite a dynamic thing that we have staff do. It's a lot of work on top of what they're already doing, working with clients in shelter. But our staff take the time to really honor those callers and really, I think, be with them in whatever they're experiencing.
Another way that we're trying we're trying to ensure that the steps that are being taken at a time when a woman's in crisis, she's calling. Right now, the way it's set up, again, it's just at times when things are happening, like what was happening in the 70s and the 80s, every shelter had its own crisis line, and that has never changed. So as shelters have opened, each one of them got a crisis line. So now, a woman calls a crisis line, and she called Flynn House, and Flynn House says, no, sorry, we're full, and she quickly hangs up because she wants to call over to Lorena to find out if Lorena's open, and if it's a no there, then she hangs up and she's calling Morinville. So that's her experience right now. So I'm really excited to talk about an opportunity and a project that Ashley and I have been really working on, and that is a partnership with 211. So we got a call from 211 saying that they really wanted to reach out to us and to look at how can we work together to make this experience easier for the woman who's calling. So we are looking at launching in May a new pilot project. It's the Edmonton and area shelters that will be involved in this. So all of my colleagues from Edmonton and area and ourselves will all be funneling our calls into 211 to specially trained operators who will be assessing the woman's situation if at that point, we've got a system that came out of Calgary called ShelterLink, where they can see who has beds and who doesn't have beds. If there are no beds in the area and the woman is in imminent risk, they will order a cab for her, she will be taken to a hotel, and the next morning a worker will be in there working with her to sort of figure out what those next steps are going to look like. So it's going to be one call, it's going to be telling her story once, and she is going to have that immediate support that she needs. And I've got to give Ashley a lot of credit because she has really taken this project on and really, really run with it. And, you know, the difference she's making in our community is absolutely incredible.
When I talked to Leslie a couple months ago, you were telling me about kind of how the process works and how you go to emergency shelter and then people end up staying there right now for longer than you would want. And then they would often go to a second stage shelter. So maybe you could explain what is the situation with that backlog and what's going on with what second stage shelters do. And it seems like, you know, we don't have enough of them.
Yeah, so as I was mentioning before, you know, this backlog that's happening within shelters because of the lack of affordable housing. So second stage shelters, again, are an area where women can move into, and they've got the wraparound services that they need at the time. So for instance, our second stage shelter, we have a house with accommodating turnout for 4 women. And we specifically have women who have precarious immigration status. So that means that they don't have any of the resources that other people who are Canadians or permanent residents have. So they really have nothing, like nothing at all. So our shelter has been set up so that they have a safe place to go and that we can start building not only on their immigration, but also on what those next steps are going to look like in their life. And also during this time too, there's a lot of times that they have to go back to their home country because of papers or because of, you know, different things. And it's usually really, really messy, you know, and for women to come out on the other side of it, it's a very exciting period of time. So yes, we've been doing this now for the last about 9 years. But you know, Windhouse has really committed to becoming a part of the solution. So we are right now actively working to look at possibilities for expansion, you know, for a 1, 2, and 3 bedroom complex that is going to be able to house 63 families and be able to offer those wraparound services. Also making sure that we have space within the building where people from the community can come in. And when I talk about people from the community, I'm talking about places like YWCA, who has specific counseling for domestic violence, the Today Center, who has outreach. So they can actually come into the building and meet with the women there, and the women can begin to make those community connections. Instead of making them with Windhouse, which will end when they leave Windhouse, if they start making the community connections there, then they will have them for as long as they need them when they move into the community. So we're really fostering that type of an atmosphere. We're looking also at ensuring that there's common spaces so people don't feel isolated. I remember back, and this was when I was relatively new at Windhouse, and was thinking about the redesign of a second stage shelter, and I had a couple of the moms that were living in the shelter, and we were at an event together, and I said, you know guys, I'm really thinking of this great idea and building this really wonderful building, and one of them said, hey, oh, that'd be terrible. And I went, like, what? You mean you wouldn't like to have your own apartment and have this? And she said, no, I'd love to have the apartment, but she said, I don't have anybody here in Canada. I'm all by myself, and these people are my family. And she said, that would take away my family. And I will remember that for the rest of my life. And in any planning that's happening, that has to be a part of it. So lots of moving parts as far as this is concerned. And, we've got our fingers crossed that we're going to be able to see our vision come true.
I think when we think about second stage, it's when you're working in the emergency shelters, you're rushing. Even though somebody's there for 4 months, you're still rushing to get people into resources, to get them into housing. But the gap is still there in terms of relationship or connection to a support network outside of Wynn House. There's so many, we leave people, we try to get them into a safe and sustainable exit, but there's so many gaps. And I think with second stage, why we need it more is to give people more time to kind of get the support they actually need, to let their nervous system settle down so that they can actually try to make some informed decisions. And so, yeah, there's a huge need. So I think it's exciting that we're thinking of trying to move in that direction.
I think another thing that is essential with second stage is that it's about breaking the cycles of violence. So breaking the patterns of behavior that, and learning about yourself and the confidence and the power that you have as a woman, and being able to see the patterns and see the red flags, be able not to repeat that, in addition to redeveloping those relationships with your kiddos, because you're no longer in this safety bubble where you're only able to think about safety. So then you're able to redevelop your attachment to your children and your care and your love and the things that come naturally to you as a mom. You're now able to actually re-engage in. And that gives time for healing and breaking those cycles.
Maybe you can get into that a little bit more about why this takes so much time. I know that when people are kind of feel like they're stuck in an abusive situation, they get used to it almost, or that becomes normal. And all of the different things that these women have to kind of relearn how to be independent. Maybe you can talk a little about, the financial side of things, if they're relying on their spouse and they now have to, for the first time, work and that type of thing. There's so many different things to consider when you're trying to get someone out living on their own.
I mean, if you imagine any kind of really big change, that's the first part, moving out of your house, living in a space that you're sharing with a bunch of other people. There's so much to it that just gets your nervous system going in fight or flight. Also just your own safety, trying to survive. But violence is a cycle. There's an ongoing pattern to it over time. And there's so much complexity to why people stay in situations or when and why they decide to leave. I just think that there's so much there in terms of, power and control. It's a complicated situation. And I think something that's interesting as a shelter worker, working with folks that are, exiting situations that are filled with, power over. And as shelter workers trying to figure out how do we provide psychoeducation on domestic violence situations or gender-based violence situations, how do we help people understand what's going on without being power over? It's a complicated thing. And so, I don't think there's an easy answer to it. I think it's ongoing throughout time.
I think part of it is also, I sometimes believe we underestimate the psychological impacts of the violence. Violence is rarely physical. Physical violence is an escalation of years of power and control. It starts with removing little, your finances, giving you little pieces of your financial freedom, isolating you from friends and family, talking down to you, making you think that you aren't worthy, and removing your confidence as a woman and as a person in the world, and maybe you don't need to work because I got you, and removing all of the things and all of that, now you don't have anything to your name. You don't have the house doesn't belong to you, your finances don't belong to you, and you've lost all of everything. And then you get the escalation, and so the financial abuse and the psychological abuse and the technology abuse and all of those things that lay into gender-based violence, domestic violence, that's a big TV. And I think that when women do make the decision to leave, the psychological piece has to be unraveled. It's an onion that needs to be peeled back, and you have to dig deep into those layers, and there's time there, and it's effort, and it's a lot of effort on the woman's part to have to go through that, and so that's timely. And and also, the devil is you know what to expect in your environment when you have done it for so long, and now you're going to leave with nothing, and you have to start from scratch. That's terrifying. To start from zero.
Maybe you can talk a little bit about the children you see in shelter and their experiences and how you support them.
Yeah, children in shelter. It's actually one of my favorite parts about working in shelter is getting to experience kids from all ages. We see, teenagers, we see newborn babies. We've had folks birth babies, not in shelter, but, go and birth their baby, come back to shelter. But it's a pretty special thing. But I think part of it has been our challenge is we support kids as best we can. We provide, respite for mom. We connect them to resources in the community that can support them, like Norwood or Bissell Daycare or whatever it is that we can connect people to. But I think oftentimes, we're so focused on mom that we don't necessarily focus as much on kids. And that's what we're working on. We just have decided to kind of pursue a new position, a trauma-informed family support coordinator. Did I get it right? It's a long name. But that person we're looking for the right person to be somebody who's specifically focused on our kids because they have their own individual experiences. And sometimes we forget they're also exiting a traumatic situation. They're exiting ongoing violence that they maybe have been experiencing their whole lives. And so how do we break cycles of violence with kids? That's what we're going to try to work on with this new position. Creating, support, maybe a support group for boys. How do we teach about violence? How do we teach about healthy relationships? What does that look like? And maybe we open up our space so that kids can come back to it. If they've been in shelter for 3 months and then they leave, well, maybe they can come back and continue getting support from the people in our staff that are specialized to work with kids. So we're working on that, and I think it's exciting because we know that our kids need more support and more care than what they might be currently getting.
I just want to tell a little story. So last week, or this week, I think it was this week. It doesn't matter. This week, I know, I've been messed up all week. We had in one of our shelters, there was a little boy who turned 7. And so in our shelter, the staff, if we're aware of a birthday, we can request birthday gifts, and then through donations, we can pull together a birthday gift for the kid, the mom, whomever's having a birthday in shelter. So this kiddo was having a birthday, and the mom asked if she could throw a birthday party. So the staff went all out. It was a full birthday party with cake and presents and decorations, and the whole shelter came down, and it was a beautiful event, and everybody had so much fun. And that little boy said, "This is my best birthday." And so that's something that he's going to leave shelter with and remember a pretty terrible time in his life, that he had this great birthday when his mom took him to shelter to create a safe space for them.
I recently spoke to a counselor who used to run a men's healthy relationships group, and I asked him, are we seeing an increase in domestic violence and intimate partner violence? Because it seems like that way, just based on hearing these kind of awful stories of the people being killed by their partners. And he said he wasn't sure, because obviously we've seen a population increase, but he said there definitely is a trend in people coming to see me that have had violence in their family lives. They grew up with it. So they think that this kind of relationship is normal. And he says, you know, they might be comparing their relationship to their parents' relationship, and their relationship might be a little bit better than their parents' relationship were, and so they're like, we're not as bad as my parents, but they're still yelling at each other. There's still abuse. And so to me, it sounds like it very much is a cyclical problem. Maybe you can talk about that, about the trends you see.
I feel like, you know, it is an escalation. We are seeing more, as I said earlier, about like if there's an economic crisis, there's a lot of stress, and we are seeing significantly more femicides. There was 4 in December, alone within Canada, and 2 in our city, I think it was. So there is, and like I said earlier, violence is an escalation. So everything has been building up to this point, and we're just at such a stressful time in our economic lives that things are becoming more severe. And the number one indication to being more probable to being murdered by your partner is strangulation. So if you're being strangled, you are at very high risk of being murdered. One of the things that we do in shelters, an assessment called the danger assessment. It is a tool that is a tested tool. It's a validated tool that scores somebody's lethality. Where are they on the risk of their, and every single time we do this assessment, the woman we're doing it with is surprised at how much risk, how close she is to death in her relationship, how close she is to being murdered, that her relationship is so toxic, and that it's always something that she is very surprised about. So I think it is exceptionally normal that that the humans within these relationships are normalizing what they're experiencing based on what they grew up with, or what they're experiencing, or that just the confidence that has been pushed down by their partner.
I mean, yeah, all these things building, it's a pressure cooker. And if you can imagine, like, not knowing how to, you know, I mean, just crisis or conflict resolution in general, I don't think a lot of people are great at that. But imagine all these other factors, like, you know, poverty, addiction. There's all kinds of things that, like, feed into this pressure cooker. And then, yeah, we kind of meet people when the pressure cooker has, I don't know, what happens? Does it explode? What happens if it, I don't know. No, it burns out, whatever. And that's when we're meeting people. So we're seeing them at the most desperate moments of their situations. I'm sure all of us have been in situations where things were really escalated with whoever our loved ones are, or people in our lives. And yeah, we're just meeting people in that moment in their life. And so we get to kind of journey with them and give them tools and use the tools that we have to help provide some healthy psychoeducation and just knowledge. Some of us don't even know. People don't even, they'll see, you know, a power and control wheel. I don't know how many of you have ever seen a power and control wheel. It's a tool that kind of shows different situations that showcase power over. And so, and so we'll show people that, and they'll be like, oh my gosh, that is my relationship, but I didn't even know that this was power over. And so we get to have the privilege of exploring that with people, and it's challenging and it's heavy, but those are little pieces of it that we can do to kind of support and create moments of kind of like realization maybe, or growth, or whatever that looks like.
For say your average person who's hearing this and, you know, hearing about the pressures that Woodhouse and other organizations are facing and want to know how they can help somehow. I mean, obviously donating helps, but what else can people do? Should we be advocating to our governments for more? I mean, what do you think is the single thing that someone could focus on helping that someone could do?
The first thing I would say is educate yourself about domestic violence, because all of you, I will guarantee there is somebody in your life right now that's experiencing domestic violence, whether they're talking about it or not. So understanding what some of those clues are, and understanding how to really be a good active listener if and when that period of time comes. So it could be a coworker, it could be a friend, it could be, we were just with a group of people and they were telling us about a story about one of the moms that their daughters played together on a soccer team. And the incredible violence that was happening in the house and nobody knew. And the whole community of this soccer team have circled this mom to really help her out and help her kind of get to some of those next stages of what she needs. So, knowing how to do that, and there's great places to learn. If you're looking for resources, the Alberta Council of Women's Shelters on their websites have a lot of really good resources around how to talk to people. But if you're caught off guard, the main thing is listen and believe. If somebody says that they're experiencing domestic violence, I don't care if you think that partner is the best thing since sliced bread. There's a very strong chance that that's exactly what's happening. And even if you might not label it as domestic violence, the woman who's experiencing it is. So that is her life and her thoughts. So that would be my number one thing.
Just a little self-disclosure. So I was in a domestic violence relationship, and when I left this relationship and I was telling people, the people in our world would say, "Oh, really? He's such a nice guy." And I heard that and various other sentences like that frequently. And that is mine and other women's personal hell, because you're experiencing the devil. And the out version that he's giving to everyone else is this like really well put together human, and it's a facade. And so when somebody is disclosing that to you and you know their partner, try your best to just listen and validate and hear, because you are validating literally their personal hell when you're like, "Wow, really? But he's such a nice guy."
I think just building on that from the folks that we meet every day at the shelter is like figuring out how to cut your own judgment or your own kind of, feelings about their situation, because life is complicated and it's really hard. And I'm sure all of us can empathize with that, right? There's solidarity in the fact that all of us can imagine being in some kind of situation where things are really, really, really difficult. And so, I think that's the piece. Like, how can you develop empathy and create a space for solidarity in that with your fellow humans who are experiencing all kinds of stuff just like you are, just looks a little bit different.
And yes, advocate your government. And yes, unfortunately, when times get tough, usually the first things to go are the social programs. And, I do have to say we've got an incredibly empathetic minister right now who really has gotten behind domestic violence. And we got the first raise that we have seen since 2014. We got it this year. Granted, it is only for 1 year. It's a 1 year thing, but there is more money being committed to domestic violence shelters. So that is an amazing thing, but we are not doing this by ourselves. We have our friends and our colleagues in other places like sexual assault centers who did see a cut, the homeless shelters who are getting cuts all the time. So it's really kind of keeping that pressure on the government and ensuring that our most vulnerable human beings are being looked after, and that we have safe places for them to go and the support services that they need.
Thank you so much, ladies. So now we're going to turn it to the audience. If anyone in the audience has any questions for any of the panelists, please. Oh, we've got a few with hands up. So microphone. Is this the only one?
Yeah.
I think probably just
I'm not that on bad.
Still speaking enough to give.
So you have yes, so that's security for the staff and for the clients. You touch on that? Another questions?
Oh, sure. She was just wondering what security is like when you go to Winhouse or when you seek help.
Well, the staff themselves. Oh, staff.
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. Security is something we take really, really seriously at Winhouse. So, I mean, there's always the general precautions, like we have an alarm system, we have alarmed window screens, we have camera system that our staff are able to see at all times. All of our doors are locked at all times, so when somebody leaves the building, we actually, as staff, unlocks it and opens and shuts it. We have intercom systems that we can maybe talk to whoever's outside if we don't know who they are before opening the door. So those are some of the kind of basic ones. But also, Winhouse, our locations are undisclosed. So the general public should not, and hopefully does not, know where we are. We don't allow our address to be given out at all. We don't really allow visitors of any kind unless we know who they are and they're registered, maybe like a maintenance company or something specific that's happening. And then the other piece is that we have real, honest conversations with our residents about who their abuser might be, and then we take a description. We understand, are they somebody who has access to weapons? Are they somebody who has access to a vehicle? What does that vehicle look like? And then we'll send out a security alert to our whole team so that we have basically like a profile of who that person is so we can all be aware and be careful. Our staff are also trained, with conflict de-escalation skills, and at the end of the day, we have little buttons we can push if we're in serious danger that will connect us with police. So yeah, there's a lot of those kind of precautions.
We also have an app, I guess, that's a security monitoring app. And so when the staff don't check in, a live person calls to see if everything's okay. And if they either don't get an answer or the staff don't say the password, then our on-call is called, and then it gets escalated continuously from there.
I saw another question over there. Are you able to stand up and say it and I can translate it?
So my question is regarding mental health outdoor employees, because you hear a lot of employees that work at the intensive care your term testing. I'd like to know how you kind
So he was wondering what kind of mental health supports there are for staff, like you guys who have to deal with people going through traumatic situations every single day. I know this might kind of sound funny for management, but I'm really proud to say we're a unionized environment to start off with. There are a few shelters that are, and that, as far as I'm concerned, gives everybody a level of, a different level than a lot of the people who are working in the shelter services are. So our mental health program is incredibly robust. We not only offer benefits for our employees, and we really listen to our employees, and we also have listened to our providers who are telling us that, one of the biggest benefits that get used up all the time is your mental health benefits. So we were able to also incorporate a flex plan for our employees, which gave them an additional $1,800 a year to be able to use towards any type of mental health. We have had the occasion where people have gone through very significant times, and we will go above and beyond supporting them in doing that. We really believe in our staff. We believe that they are the cornerstone of everything that we do. And yes, a lot of them do come into shelter because of lived experience, and they get re-traumatized
So, you know, just making sure that we have those things available for them. You know, they're having a bad day, go home. Like just, you know, take that time that you need. You've had a bad experience, take the time that you need to be able to come to the other side. Because of this, and I kind of got the easy job of just kind of sitting in the office and making sure the organization is running. These two ladies here with all of the staff that report to them do the really, really hard jobs every single day. And because of the caring and the compassion that they have shown the staff, our shelter, which was really not in a great position a few years ago, has become one that is welcoming, staff feel safe, they feel secure, and we really honestly are feeling like family, and it's due to their hard work, and I will always be grateful to both of them for doing that.
Yeah, I think just to add on to that, just practical as a manager, I work with frontline staff every day, all day. And yeah, a lot of it is this extra piece of debriefing. There's an incident, we debrief it. We connect, we give the staff a phone call, we give them the afternoon if they need it. We follow up, we have trauma counseling available to staff if they need it. We'll bring that in if they need it. And then making sure that our staff are taking care of themselves. So following up and keeping them accountable to self-care, keeping them accountable to not overworking themselves. So there's all those little pieces that kind of help our staff feel empowered to ask for help when they need it.
And you have a question, Pam?
What boundaries you said Edmonton and area, so I was wondering how far we've been making a situation where women wanted to stay, but for a while to for you to can't be beyond 40 kilometers or is our goal. There's where you just longer, right? And just like in parties, are there any singular for men?
And she was wondering what area you serve, because apparently someone was told they couldn't be served in, you know, they were going to be rejected, and then also whether there is supports for men.
So that's really unfortunate that the lawyer has indicated that. But we serve, we'll take it anyone from anywhere. So our funding is really within the Edmonton region, but people have come from Calgary, people have come from Vancouver. I did a safe transfer from Ontario last year. So we really will take, if we have space, and we got you. There are shelters for men. The Mornville Shelter, the Jessica Martel Memorial Foundation is an all-gender shelter, and there are also a few shelters in the Calgary region as well that serves men and all genders.
All right, I think that is it. I just wanted to open it up to see if there's anything else you ladies would like to say. Okay, thank you so much. That's the end of our panel. I really appreciate it.